from 5 different. Again, press OK if you haven't. We've experienced lectures from 5 different faiths. We now have a 6th, and it is my pleasure today to introduce you Dr. Wendi Momen, who's speaking in relation to the Bahá'í Faith. She's been associated with the Bahá'í Faith all of her life. Her grandma, a Norwegian immigrant to the US, read about it in a 1912 newspaper and became a Bahá'í in 1947. How's that for speed? Wendi was born in Hollywood, which is a small, obscure village in California, and moved to the UK when she was 18. She holds a BSc in economics and a PhD in international relations from the LSE. She has served as a magistrate in the adult, youth and family courts in Bedfordshire for 38 years and has been a member of the National Governing Council, what's called the National Spiritual Assembly, of the Baha'is of the UK for 35 years, this despite her youthful good looks. She is dedicated to the advancement of women and is a trustee of Women's Rights International. She's a co-founder of Ethical Business Building the Future. Ethical Business Building the Future, a Baha'i-inspired organization. Wendi is mostly going to talk, I think, about the role of Baha'i teachings on women and the role of women in the Baha'i faith, etc. At the end of her talk, you'll be encouraged to ask questions by raising an electronic hand. But Wendi, many welcomes and thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. The demise of the Interfaith Network was rather devastating to all of us.
But... Oh, yes, that's okay. It is a straight one. I don't know who.
Are you sure? Oh, Virginia's there.
Yeah, unless that's Wendi. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if people could just mute themselves so that I can hear myself.
Oh.
Thank you. So it's really an honor to be here and to be able to talk to such a large group of people as well. There's been Interfaith Week. It's my 3rd outing on this subject, but not on the specific subject this week. Just to say, I met Elizabeth when we were both Baha'i youth. I was living in Oklahoma at that time, having gone there to go to university, and she was living in Arkansas and having come from Texas, so not far from where she had grown up. And we were both, as I say, Baha'i youth, and we stayed friends for more than 50 years. She came to the UK, came to Europe, came to the UK. She lived with us for a while when we were living in London. So we've known each other very, very well over a very long time, and more than half a century. And you know, I was really, like many, very, very saddened by her passing, which was much too young and very untimely. I'm so pleased that this lecture series is keeping her memory alive. And I'm sure she's listening in wherever she is. So Elizabeth herself was a champion, as you know, of understanding and cooperation among faiths. And she was also a champion of women's rights. And she worked for the advancement of women. And as a Baha'i, she really embraced the religion's teachings on the oneness of humanity and the equality of women and men, the education of girls and women, and the participation of women in leadership spaces as in all aspects of life. So today I was asked to speak about women in the Baha'i faith, and I've called this In Full Partnership. This comes from a phrase in the Baha'i writings, but also this book, which has recently been published. You probably can't see it very well, but it's called In Full Partnership, 30 Years of Women's Advancement at the United Nations and Beyond. And it's a collection of some of the statements of the Baha'i international community. And I was involved in most of those 30 years at the United Nations, so I was quite pleased to buy this book myself. So just considering this concept of full partnership and of women and men, what does this actually mean for Baha'is? Well, one way to think about this is to think of a bird and how it flies. You know, if humanity is a bit like that as well. If a bird has two wings, if it only has one wing that's functional or present, it can't fly at all. It can just scurry around in the ground. And that's the same for humanity. We say that humanity has two wings, a female wing and a male wing, and they most work together to enable the bird of humanity to soar. If one of the wings is not functional, is not allowed to function, is tied up, it's damaged, it's underdeveloped, then the bird of humanity does not fly. So full partnership really begins with the understanding of the equality of women and men as a spiritual truth, as a universal spiritual truth, a statement about human nature, not a modern social contract. This truth was promulgated by the founder of the Bahá'í Faith, Baha'u'llah, more than 160 years ago in his native Iran. That women should enjoy equal rights with men is a requirement of justice, according to the Baha'is. In the first instance, its application strengthens family life. And this is beyond what's now called allyship, that is, people who work together and are allies of a perhaps secondary or marginalized group. It's important, that concept, but for a Baha'i, the concept of equality of men and women is a fundamental truth about the human reality and not just a desired condition to be achieved for the good of society. The reality of the human being is his or her soul. And the soul, as we firmly believe in the Baha'i Faith, has no gender. Men and women exhibit physical differences that undeniably influence some aspects of how we experience the world. But in essence, in their qualities and potentialities, that is, in all the ways that really make human beings human, women and men are without distinction. We can neither one can claim superiority over the other. And it says in the Baha'i text, Baha'u'llah wrote that women and men have been and always will be equal in the sight of God. So it's imperative that equality that already exists as a spiritual truth to be expressed in practice. So that's the sort of basis of where the Baha'is stand with regard to that particular subject. And then thinking further about the social reality of full partnership, Baha'is believe that it's essential for the regeneration and progress of every nation. So, you know, for example, if you have people, half the people in a country or in the world being disregarded, uneducated, unable to make decisions, or to contribute to the creation of knowledge or its application, if we have that, how can we possibly progress as a country? How can we progress as a city or a village or a home? And we can think of countries, and you know where they are, and communities that are failing to thrive simply because they have failed to understand and apply this principle of equality. For Baha'is, beyond this consideration, peace in the world and the advancement of civilization, which is one of the objectives of all religion, is to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. These two elements of society actually rely on the realization of the full equality and partnership of women and men. The International Governing Council of the Worldwide Baha'i Community, which we call the Universal House of Justice, wrote just over 40 years ago, during, if some of you will remember, the International Year of Peace, which began on United Nations Day in 1985. And in part of the letter that this governing council wrote to the Baha'is in the world had a list of the different things that would enable peace to take place and to be realized. And it said, the emancipation of women, the achievement of full equality between the sexes is one of the most important though less acknowledged, prerequisites of peace. The denial of such equality perpetrates an injustice against 1/2 of the world's population and promotes in men harmful attitudes and habits that are carried from the family to the workplace to a political life and ultimately to international relations. My brackets, as we have been seeing, there are no grounds, moral, practical, or biological, upon which such denial can be justified. Only as women are welcomed into full partnership in all fields of human endeavor will the moral and psychological climate be created in which international peace can emerge. So this concept of the full partnership comes from that 40-year-old statement. So I wanted to look next at what Baha'is think about, how am I doing, with regard to the status and advancement of women. So what Baha'is are trying to do is, from this particular perspective we have of this spiritual quality of equality, the spiritual sense of equality, that we're trying to learn about how to create a new life for ourselves and our communities. So a new pattern of family life, for example, a new pattern of life within our neighborhoods, a new pattern of international relationships, and how we can learn to develop the elements that will sustain these new attitudes. Baha'is are also recognizing that while the status of women has advanced here in the UK, it's taking over 100 years to do that. If we take a global view, many women will still start with a disadvantage in life, and this needs to be addressed. And you can just think of some of the elements. I won't mention them all, but you can think of traditional thinking and harmful traditional practices that are embedded in the perception of women as not being really up to much. The belief sometimes buoyed up by religious norms and other cultural determinants that the place of women is basically in the home. And the structure and systems of underlying cultures, often unnoticed, may be prejudicial to women in numerous ways. So these attitudes can foster lower investment in women, lower educational opportunities, finances, and so on. And they also undermine the healthy development of families and neighborhoods, including fostering multiple forms of violence against women and girls. And please note that the 16 days of activism to eliminate violence against women and girls starts on the 25th of November and runs until Human Rights Day on the 10th of December. And it's a big time for us, those of us who are dedicated to this concept, women and men, to take note of how we can try to eliminate this tremendous injustice, not just against women and girls, but actually for all people, because it harms everyone. So Baha'is are seeking to change these attitudes and the underlying structures and the systems at every level. We try to work in our families, community, and our work and jobs, government level, and at the international level. And Baha'is are particularly concerned with the education of girls as a way forward. Also, of course, of older women, senior women, and I work for as a part of a thing called Widows' Rights International. Widows' Rights International, so interested in widows, many of whom are children, by the way. People think of widows as old like me, but actually many millions of girls are widowed by war, famine, and all the rest of it. They're married young, very young, to culturally wrong, but they still do it. They're still forced into those marriages. And then when they lose their husband, they're either set outside their communities. They don't know where they've gone if they've been married to a military person, and they have no rights and no opportunities to advance, to have education, or even to own their own children. So I'm very passionate about that particular thing as well. It's very interesting as Baha'is that the importance of educating girls is so high that in the Baha'i writings it says that if you can only afford to educate some of your children, you must educate your girls. Why? Well, first of all, they are going to be the mothers of the next generation, and if the mothers are not educated, there's really no hope for the children. Secondly, women are charged in the Baha'i Faith for trying to bring in peace at the international level. It's one of the main functions of women in this age is to establish world peace in different ways. So we're looking at partnership with men, of course, in all of this, that women don't have to do these things alone. And the concept of equality means that we still need the two wings of the bird of humanity to fly together. So there are some primary, you might know these already, social teachings of the Baha'i Faith, which are employed as we try to do this, operationalize the equality of women and men. The first one is the recognition of the oneness of humanity. I just put it like this: we're one people living on one planet. That's it. That's it. That's basically it. Get over it if you don't believe it, because it's just the truth. The Baha'i teachings for implementing the road to full partnership, as I've mentioned already, is that girls have priority of education over boys. Every child has to become literate, and fathers are given the responsibility to educate their girls and boys in reading and writing. This is in the Baha'i scripture. And then women are to become proficient in the arts and sciences and prove by their accomplishments that their abilities and powers have merely been latent. This was in a talk that was given in 1912 in the United States by the son of the founder of the Baha'i Faith, and his name was Abdul Baha. He also said women must become proficient in the arts and sciences and prove by their accomplishment that their ability, oh, I've already read that. I just read it. Women must be, no, that's my inadequacy. Women must become especially devout, devote their energies and abilities towards the industrial and agricultural sciences, seeking to assist humankind in that which is most needful. And it's interesting because, again, this was read in 1912. But you can think of how important both of those, the industrial and agricultural sciences. You think of AI today, you think of food production, the lack of understanding how farming has decreased. We live in a farming area, it's decreased significantly here. And finally, women are charged to participate in all the affairs of a community and in its governance systems. It's also an interesting point that Abdul Baha also made. He said this in 1911 when he was in London. The woman has greater moral courage than the man. She also has special gifts which enable her to govern in moments of danger and crisis. So as we're in that period of moral danger, of danger and crisis, it might be worthwhile considering how we can enable women to advance into positions of decision-making at all levels more effectively than they have been in the past. It's also an interesting statement because I've never seen any other statement like that about the participation of women in decision-making because of their special skills that they have. So what are the Baha'is doing about this? To operationalize this and promote them? Well, we have a lot of good ideas, as I've just said, but what are we actually doing? So first, to remind us that the Baha'i Faith is a religion. It's not a development agency per se. So all the aspects of the work undertaken by the Baha'is is underpinned by spiritual values. And these drive the activity and the thinking behind our progress. It also means that the Baha'is are focusing on a number of actions at once, as we believe they're all integrated. So primarily, the Baha'is seek to introduce concepts of human dignity, the oneness of humanity, as we've mentioned, the use of consultation skills. This is a way of decision-making that Baha'is use, and uncovering the truth, how we find truth in our discussions, as well as try to promote concepts of trustworthiness, honesty, courtesy, etc., into all aspects of our lives, activities, and work. And this underpins Ethical Business Building the Future, which I helped to co-found in 1990. It's still going. Another thing that the Baha'is are doing since 1996 has been working within a system which we call the Training Institute. And it's a global process of learning that's helping us and friends to build our capacity to apply these teachings of Baha'u'llah to the transformation of society at all levels. So just basically, it's a series of materials that enhance the capacity of individuals and communities to serve humanity. And we think about this as walking a path of service to others. So we have grassroots-based study circles, junior youth empowerment programs, children's classes, and all of these are available for free to anyone who wishes to join them. And they're largely, as I say, at the grassroots, and they give us a very rich and complex learning experience where we live. Sometimes they're on Zoom like now, but most of these things take place in the neighborhoods where people live, where people can walk to them and don't require a special building. You can do these under a tree. The programs are led by both women and men, and the junior youth programs and children's classes are run primarily by young people, again, women and men who've completed the courses themselves. And so you have 15-year-olds teaching children and 18-year-olds teaching junior youth. So it's a very young process, or youngly populated by very young people. And one of the courses of the Training Institute program is on marriage and family life. In fact, I teach that course in the mornings on Friday morning, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock in the morning on Zoom. We've been going now for some time and for the 2 books that we've been studying there together. And so that's how important marriage and family life is, as well as we're trying to learn about how to create a new pattern of family life, not based on our histories, what we did, what our parents did, what our grandparents did, but to enable us to create a world which actually has these ideas in it, starting with our own families. And right now, in the UK, we have over 1,500 of these kinds of activities taking place right now at the grassroots. So there's one near you. If you'd like to find out about it, you can ask Steve. He'll probably go. So Baha'is do see development not as something that one community does to another, but something that is based on the building of the capacity of communities of people to take charge of their own development through consulting together, reading the reality of their community, deciding what it looks like, what they need to do, finding local solutions, and collectively acting in learning mode to make decisions and take steps together for the betterment of their community. And of course, it requires both men and women, older people and younger people to do this together. At the moment, apart from the activities associated with the training institutes, there are over 100,000 such local initiatives of fixed donation around the world and over 2,000 sustained projects of this development. I also just want to take a few moments to talk about the nature of mothers. Mothers have had a bad time of it in recent years with the women's movement, of which I'm a major player to the international and national levels in this country. I just came off a whole seminar that we were doing in another space for the United Kingdom's Civil Society Women's Alliance, made up of hundreds of women and their organizations. So mothers are a very important part of a family and of community life. Baha'is seek to raise the status of mothers and their importance. And this is not just about women. This is also about men getting on board with this concept. It's always also driven by the needs at the grassroots and by individual people living in their neighborhoods. So the things that the Baha'is work with women on, apart from helping them to educate their own children and learn how to have moral education for their children, fathers as well, of course, but I'll mention it just as women, training in life skills, especially literacy, because if you can't read in your own language, you probably cannot function in your community effectively. Nutrition training, hygiene, first aid, and gardening. Again, that's part of that agricultural imperative for women. Health, including mental health and spiritual health. Baha'is do think that it's extremely important to ensure that messages about health don't cast women as victims, but rather treat them as participants in the decisions about their own and their family's well-being. There's wealth creation schemes. There's also microfinance projects. We had one ourselves through EBBF, crafts and market produce, so enabling women to earn some cash. Also, as I mentioned earlier, trying to reduce violence against women, particularly within families, and particularly by trying to steer people away from harmful traditional practices, such as female genital mutilation or cutting. And the other one for everyone, of course, is money management. And there's an entire letter from our governing body about economics, which we study and learn from. I've mentioned peace, and the role of women in establishing peace was particularly emphasized by Abdu'l-Baha when he was traveling in North America. He was very much in favor of universal suffrage, and he got there just as that campaign was taking off, and he has stated, universal peace is impossible without universal suffrage. So it will come to pass, he said, that when women participate fully and equally in the affairs of the world, when they enter confidently and capably the great arena of law and politics, war will cease, for women will be the obstacle and hindrance to it. Thus, Baha'is expect women to undertake civic responsibilities as well as taking responsibilities within their own homes. So I just move on to the concept of family and home. Our Universal House of Justice in March, 19th of March, sent a letter to all the Baha'is in the world about the importance of families and family life. And we've been learning a lot from that and studying that together. And it's helping us to implement these teachings of the Baha'i Faith. So the family is the nest of many of these ideas, is where they grow. It's the first place that these ideas can be fostered, practiced, and implemented. The partnership of women and men requires that decisions be taken in tandem, and that starts in the home. So it's not that you have somebody who leads the house, the man at the top or the woman at the top. These are things that we learn to do collaboratively together. The decision-making skills by the adult partners in the family are taught to the next generation, and it becomes part of who they are as people. And they learn those skills and accept them as a natural part of being a human being and living in a family. I have to say, I grew up, my father was Jewish, my mother was a Baha'i, but she taught us many of those skills from an early age. And my grandmother, as mentioned, from Norway, lived right across the street from us. So we had a little neighborhood of Baha'is. My grandfather, by the way, who was born in Kent, was Church of England until the day he died, but he's the only one of our family who ever met Abdu'l-Baha, who he met when he was in Egypt in the First World War and stationed there. It's another story. So the things that we learn, basically, and we all know the things we learn in the family, we take out and transfer into the wider community. So if we're learning good skills, we're learning positive messages, then we take those into school as children, we take them into our workplaces when we're adults, into the community, into other spaces where we might be decision makers in different ways. So as I say, we've had this letter. Now we're learning more about the significance of the family, its nature, and the relationship of its members, and its outward-looking orientation. We're not just looking at our own families, but the wider family environment, and also the neighborhoods in which we live, to be active participants there. And one of the features of many Baha'is homes is that they have an open door, that anybody can come and visit, and be friendly, learn, and have a cup of tea or whatever it is. And just welcoming people into our homes is something which we try to encourage. So just to sum up on that part, the home is to provide the values and attitudes, the behaviors and the practices that will enable women and girls to shoulder the responsibilities both within the home and in the wider society. And the dignity afforded to women and their equal treatment are basic to their empowerment, with their participation in decision-making and consultation within the home helps them to provide a skill which is transferable elsewhere, including to the workplace, the political arena, should they go into that field. Baha'is are not politicians, by the way. We don't join political parties, but we are part of the decision-making processes where appropriate. So within the Baha'i community, there's many opportunities for women to advance in all these ways I've described with the Training Institute, but we also encourage our families and all of ourselves to have an outward-looking orientation. So it's not about me, it's about all of us. So just about 10 minutes left. Wanted to just mention about the concept of women in society. So I've mentioned about women taking part in many social spaces that have to do with the betterment of the community, particularly industrial and agricultural sciences, education, health promotion. And it's interesting that in many communities around the world, the knowledge of women, sometimes it's indigenous knowledge, but also the ability to learn, and because they have families that need good health, they're really indispensable for securing the health of the wider society. If they understand nutrition, if they understand, keeping clean, and they discover the sources collectively with their neighbors of how they can boil water if required, how they can grow food that's healthy, etc. So while women are sometimes marginalized in many societies, they're marginalized and confined to their home. Actually, they have a lot of internal knowledge, wisdom, and skills. And although they're not acknowledged and they're not asked to participate in any decision making, nevertheless, they can still be effective in keeping their communities alive. And Baha'is do seek to reverse the attitudes towards women and to raise the status of women so that their insights and skills are available to the wider community, and to provide them with opportunities for their own advancement. At the international level, I'm one of the people who does it with the Baha'is. We urge governments to, and our United Nations when it's functioning, to give the highest attention to the education of girls and women. We also, as I mentioned, give priority to the education of girls over boys, and we recognize that education, vocational training, professional training must be organized in such a way that girls and women can take advantage of these. And there's several development projects that focus on women as educators. So we have a high priority for that. Yeah, I also wanted to just mention again that the Baha'is have this model training program for volunteer community health workers in many parts of the world. And also, like many organizations Baha'i inspired, such as Ethical Business Building the Future, International Environment Forum, of which I'm also a member of the board, promote the partnership of women and men in the workplace and in climate change endeavors and so on, and run programs that enable women to become entrepreneurs and champions of the processes of reversing climate damage. At the international level, the Baha'is have long participated in United Nations summits and conferences on the status of women. We've made significant representation at the United Nations. As I say, this is a book of 30 years of experience that we've had in doing that. We work with other communities in these same places, and we work primarily with civil society as well, trying to explain that as women become educated and enter all the fields of endeavor, they can make a unique contribution to creation of a just world order. So whilst the equality of women and men is not at present universally applied, we're working towards these activities. And within the Baha'i community itself, we have now 42% of our national governing bodies are women, which is well over the 30% mark that's considered to be the sort of tipping point for a critical number for influencing any group of people. And we've had that number for quite some decades now. It's quite a high number. I also just want to mention the Baha'i attitude toward violence against women and girls. We do have some problems within this in the Baha'i community. People are people. But in a very lengthy letter written in 1993, the Universal House of Justice said unequivocally that the Baha'i position on this subject, including physical, emotional violence, rape, coercive behavior, is unacceptable within the Baha'i communities and it's an unacceptable practice. And I just thought I'd mention that because it's very important that people really understand that. So I think I'll stop there. I just mentioned very briefly that the Baha'is are working collectively around the world and specifically at our international center in New York, the representation at New York, the Baha'i international community there represents the worldwide Baha'i community to the United Nations in New York. And there are branches in Brussels and Vienna and Nairobi and other places Geneva, where the UN exists. And one of the things that we've been working on for a long time has been the Beijing Platform for Action. Virginia, who is here, and I went together to China in 1995 to participate in the UN Fourth Conference on Women at that time. And we had a wonderful time of service there. We expected to go to a lot of events, but actually wound up, like every other Baha'i who was there, serving the processes at that. And we had a great time, didn't we, Ginger? It was really fantastic. And we learned a lot in those spaces. And I just, so we've been working really from that time till now on trying to promote the Beijing Platform of Action that came out of that with its 12 areas of critical concern. And now we're supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly number 5, which is for a promotion of women and girls. And so we are very happy to be part of an international group of people who are supporting the partnership, full partnership of women and men together as we travel these paths together. So I think I'll stop there and answer any questions people have got them. I have quite a few more things I could say, but I'll stop.
Thank you very much indeed, Wendi. I must say that I was very, very pleased that you mentioned domestic violence because as you know, I also did many years as a JP, and you get so many people coming up before you, and you can tell that a lady has been maltreated, but she will very rarely testify against the man that maltreated her, largely because he's afraid of it. And once you realize how much this bullying is going on, you want to do something about it. Okay, please feel free to ask whatever questions you like. If you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a sign which says react. If you click in the middle of that heart, it will give you a whole series of childish symbols, but almost at the bottom there is raise hand, and if you click on raise hand, a wonderful hand will appear in the corner of your picture, and you'll also whiz to the beginning of my screen so I'll know what order you ask the questions in. So please go ahead. Lauren, please fire away.
Hiya, thank you so much for your talk. It was really interesting. And I also did IR at LSE, so that's really funny. I had a question about the Bahá'í Faith and activism, because it sounds like there's a lot of work being done in like decision making and peace processes. But you mentioned that like people in the Bahá'í Faith don't enter political parties. So I was wondering what the position was on activism around like equality for girls and how that, like what that kind of looks like, or is it more like facilitation based with peace processes?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I think we are activists because we're. I mean, as I was saying, we're advocates for peace. We're advocates for women's rights. We're advocates. At the meeting I had just before I got onto this one was the UK Civil Society Women's Alliance, of which I'm on the executive, and one of the things that we were planning is the work that people going to the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations will do, the program that they will have. And we meet with our government here pretty much throughout the year as an organization advocating for certain things that we think should happen within the country. And, you know, there are several Baha'is who were involved in that organization as well. And two of them are on the executive. So, you know, we're seen to be kind of people who have skill sets and knowledge and relationships, because we try to build relationships. We're not trying to convince people. We're simply trying to build a relationship so that they feel that they can rely on us with those qualities I mentioned of trustworthiness. So yes, we are activists in that sense. We don't go necessarily out marching with banners or throwing things at people or having a screaming match. We would rather sit down and have a conversation built on mutual respect with the government. So you probably know that the Government Equality Office is now the Office of Equalities and Opportunity, and we'll be meeting with them shortly at the end of this month or maybe beginning of next to plan the programs that we'll have when we go to New York in March for the Commission on the Status of Women. And that's ongoing, and we have private meetings with them lined up and so forth. And then for things like Widows' Rights International, really advocating for widows and trying to work internationally with the wider group of widows organizations around the world to support these very marginalized women who have tremendous capacity but are just overlooked as people. You could have to ask my husband, who's here, about that activism, because he's in full partnership, supporting me in that in those spaces. And I think any of the Baha'is here would tell you the whole range of things that they're doing to promote these concepts, not just for women, obviously, but for a whole range of justice, education, building unity, building vibrant communities, working both at the local neighborhood grassroots and as far up as the international space. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Wendy. Karen, Chair of Windsor and Maidenhead Sacre.
Sorry, I should take that off, shouldn't I?
No,
No.
it's
Keep it
It's
down.
just I'm useless at knowing how to change some of these things. Thank you very much, Wendy, for all that you shared with us. It's a fascinating religion, and I think the people in it are remarkable. The way they want to make a difference through courteous, peaceful, gentle listening strategies, which is just so different from so many more strident faiths or beliefs or political systems. I'm always interested to know if there are if there are any. There might not be any, but are there any figureheads in the Bahá'í Faith that we might know of in our society in the UK or in the world? Are there any prominent people who have perhaps had other lives, either in the arts or in politics or in culture, that you could just identify for us as being, we might not know that they are Bahá'í followers, but it would just be very interesting.
There are people who are prominent, both within the Baha'i community and in society. They're not politicians because we don't become politicians in the Baha'i Faith. We find that a divisive activity rather than a unifying one. That doesn't mean we haven't. I mean, I did serve on my local parish council for 11 years. We can do things that are nonpartisan and are community-based. But there are some very famous actors and so forth. Rainn Wilson is one that people might know from The Office, from the American series The Office there. And he's been a prominent climate change advocate since he sort of semi-retired. But, you know, the thing about the Baha'is is we don't really, I mean, they may be very wealthy, they may do many things, but the actual work of Baha'is is really at the grassroots. And we don't really put people on a pedestal because that's the easiest way to fall. We're trying not to, it's kind of an unusual thing, but even with our children, we don't try to grow their egos, which can be, you know, a very damaging part of a child or anybody's life. As my mother said, you don't have to believe your own publicity, you know, it's a very dangerous thing. So we try not to highlight people who might be prominent in others' fields, but rather we honor people who've contributed in the path of service. So I just want to mention, for example, today, my husband's uncle passed away. He was nearly 100 years old. And he served the Baha'i Faith. The Baha'is will know what I mean as a counselor is an appointed position of guidance for the Baha'is in Thailand and in Asia. He was such a generous person. And those are the kinds of people that we really honor for their service, selfless service to humanity, and helping other people always. And the messages have already been, you know, gone shooting around. And so you probably wouldn't know anybody. I think there's a Wikipedia page that tells about all the famous Baha'is. But yeah, it's not something that we really dwell upon. We really like to just make friends in a gentle way with each other and everyone that we meet. You know, we have this statement in the Baha'i Faith that says that we should approach everyone that we meet with loving kindness.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're muted, Steve, if you're speaking.
Thank you, Karen.
Emil has her hand
Emil?
up as well. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm fascinated by the focus on women, and a faith originated from Middle East, if I'm not wrong. And men usually are tempted to dominate women rather than elevate and encourage the education. It is quite a big thing. Do you have any knowledge of what drove him to go that direction?
Well, Baha'is believe that Baha'u'llah was a voice of God on the planet at the time that he came, and that this was God's decision, not his own personal. The Baha'is were encouraged in Iran, which is where the Bahá'í Faith originated in the middle of the 19th century, to educate girls. They opened up schools. They opened up girls' schools. In fact, my husband's, whose Mujan is down there, his auntie went to the Baha'i Tarbiyat school for girls when she was young. And, you know, just to tell you a little story from the family, in 1903, the Baha'is in Yazd, where his family came from in Iran, were being persecuted. And his, I guess it was your great-grandmother, Mujan, or grandmother, anyway, was taken out into the street by a mob, and her veil was taken off her, which I guess was the equivalent today of being raped in the street in front of everybody. And it was a horrible experience for her to have this happen. And they wrote to Abdul Baha, who was, I say, the head of the Baha'i Faith at that time after his father Baha'u'llah. And he wrote back to the family and said, do not be ashamed. In the future, no woman will go veiled. All women will be unveiled. And so his aunt, who I knew very well, was at that school, a Tarbiyat school for girls. And a prominent American was asked to visit the school, American Baha'i, and she came. And the girls were all veiled in the school. And she said, why are you all veiled still? This is in the 1930s. And it was legal to be unveiled. And they said, oh, no, we shouldn't be the first ones. She said, well, you shouldn't be the last ones. So she went home and said to her father, I'm going to go to school without my veil. And she expected her father to say no. But because he'd had this letter, the family had this letter, she went to school unveiled, except for walking down the street where there was a very negative clergy person who would make a lot of comments. But she went to school like that. And the first person in the family, as far as we know, who didn't wear a veil because of this letter that they had received from Abdul Baha. But she was at that school and became a teacher herself. And you know, it was her father who encouraged that. That's what I'm trying to say. This is the nature of it. And, you know, let me pay tribute to all the men here that I know, many of them here, of course, and many of the women as well, that, you know, they have done amazingly a lot to support not just the rights and advancement of women, but to understand this concept of true partnership, full partnership. You can't be a full partner unless you're already, you know, in that sort of world, if I can put it that way. You have to understand, and both sides have to have a profound respect for the other. And the concept of power, I just want to also mention, is another very important aspect of the Baha'i Faith. We tend to think of power as power over, and Emily, you were mentioning that, you know, being the leader, being the, you know, aggressive, and we have a whole bunch of those people in the world right now who are entitled and, you know, feel that they can just do whatever they like and everybody else can just go to the wall. However, the true power doesn't come from that. That is power over. It may last for a while, but as Abdul Baha says, we all wind up in the same place, buried by the same dust-colored dust. You know, so that's not true power. True power is to be able to collaboratively work together, to work with each other and collaborate and be together, all people, and build something for the next generations as well as for ourselves. And so understanding that, it doesn't mean we're perfect or we're great, we know what we're doing. You know, we get confused, we go down the wrong way, but we have this idea of power with, and the power to do, the power to achieve, but to achieve collaboratively, not by ourselves. We need to work together. All of us, not just families, all of us.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Emma. Do we have any more questions or comments, please? Roars of silence.
Perfect.
Well, if we really have no more questions, I must thank you very much indeed, Wendy, and I must thank all of you very much indeed for coming. We at Seath will probably take advantage of the next 5 minutes to give you a plug of what else we're doing. So I'm appealing to Ayad and David and Emil to come up with anything else that they think would interest people. Such is life. Well,
I thought you wouldn't invite us to talk. I'm sorry, I'm suffering from a stinking cold and horrible voice. But I can summarize that this is the 6th SIF lecture, and we are intending to continue the lectures in the new year and more events coming. So we are thinking of bringing our annual conference back. So we have some ideas. And I'm glad that you are sticking with us. If you are interested to be more active with SIF, please drop me a line. Then we can talk about that. Just before this meeting, we had our AGM, and because of our aging membership, we have lost a couple of colleagues, and Elizabeth was one of those, and Rabbi Charles Wallach was one of those. So we are actually looking for supplements and more blood supply. If anyone is interested, or if anyone knows that they would like to be more active in the SIF world, please do. Considering that the National Interfaith Network had to fold in, the role of regional organizations is gaining more and more bigger importance. And there are some pop-up interfaith organizations coming up, and we are linking with those, and Cambridge is one of those. I met Leslie in Cambridge, and so cooperation is important, and we are trying to reach the other organizations, and we would like to be reached as well. So keep in mind. Thank you.
thank you, Emil. It also goes without saying that we have obviously lots of overlap between each other. I mean, Elizabeth was very active in ARIAC. She was also the Association of RE Advisors, Inspectors and Consultants. She used to organize much of the annual conference for the National Association of Teachers of RE. Many of us either do or have served on SACWAYS or on the Religious Education Council for England and Wales. So please, if you want to tell SIF, or if you're in the East of England Faith Forum, about things that you are doing for which you would like more publicity, you know, provided it falls in within the aim of improving relationships between faiths and getting people to talk together, we'll be happy to do it. In fact, only honored to do it. Last chance for question. Sue.
Hello.
You're we muted.
Okay, sorry. Getting used to this technology. You mentioned about interfaith and Sacre, of which I'm on the one in Monmouthshire in Wales. Sacre, it was been for 20 years. And yesterday, Monmouthshire had its very first Interfaith Day event celebrating, which was wonderful because we've all built relationships over the years with the Muslims and the various Sikh Buddhism and relationships that have been with our Sacre. And so we had a wonderful meeting in the county chambers, in the county hall yesterday, and had table displays, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I'm sort of emphasising that the relationships we build over the years with all communities, very quietly and gently, getting to know people, does have some fruition, because I was responsible for giving the little talk about the Bahá'í Faith, and immediately afterwards, the chair of it was saying, I'd never heard about it before until now. How did you become a Bahá'í? And then we were chatting, and then one of my friends who was a Sikh, she was sitting next to me, and she was a speaker. She then went to say, we went to India, we saw the temple, it was beautiful. We were only going in for an hour, and we spent about 5 hours in the temple. So. And someone else too, a lady who's created these wonderful bracelets called a Peace Mala. Again, she was in Swansea, and it was part of 9/11, and there were attacks on the Muslims and various other faith groups. So she created this lovely bracelet that represents different faiths. And she said her inspiration came from the Bahá'í Faith and from a couple in our community who have always reacted with her. So it's not just about putting the name Bahá'í out there, it's putting those ideals of having relationships, and you mentioned Wendi about service and how important service is, not thinking about ourselves but what we do for others as well. So it does come to fruition slowly, gradually, but we'll get there.
Yeah, forgive me, of course at CEIF we're talking about relations between all faiths.
Yeah.
Just offering people a chance to talk about what interfaith activities they have, but thank you for that. Any more comments, questions? Carolyn Bibas, you're muted, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Wendi, for a very lucid description of the role of women in the Baha'i Faith and the equality that we are striving to achieve. But Caroline and I are members of the Guildford and Godalming Interfaith Forum, and we have an annual event which is the next Sunday, and the theme of the event is Peace in Our Time, ? What roles religions have. And this is one of the activities we do to bring in people from various faith groups to come and give their views on how we can achieve peace. So this is one of the events. And last week, I attended, Caroline couldn't, a joint meeting with Surrey Interfaith Forum, which is, again, an umbrella organization which include most of the faiths. And the discussion took place in a church where there were representatives from Surrey County Council, the police, and various and Lord Lieutenant of Surrey, and various faith representatives to discuss knife crime and prevention, etc. And in the end, there were comments asked from various groups, and I offered to suggest that maybe faith groups could hold meetings to describe the problems to the community at large and how they can participate and bring about the or perhaps the problem isn't widely known amongst the community, and what could be done to reduce this kind of criminality. And as a Baha'i, I suggested that perhaps educating children is very important in this aspect to reduce knife crime amongst very young people. So that was taken up, and maybe we'll have some events where members of the community would join in and participate in discussion, and maybe something will come up through that. So this is important to engage with the community at large, as well as doing Baha'i activities within our local area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, on behalf of SEIF, I'd like to thank you all, and I would like to thank you, Wendi. We haven't quite fixed on what faith tradition will be on our January lecture, but it will probably be on the second Thursday in January. I say probably because only if the speaker has, maybe they're going to get a knighthood or damehood at the Buckingham Palace, we'll let them shift the date, but otherwise it's easier to stick with the standard date. So have a very good time. And we also hope, as Emil said, that you will take an interest in SEIF's annual conference when you hear of it. It's always remarkably good value. It's not expensive. The food is excellent, but more importantly, we try to relate faith to the needs of the community. So we sometimes have speakers from the police, from the court system, social workers, and we also have speakers from different faiths explaining what they do to improve community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. And I hope you get back to your living rooms safely.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you so much.
Lovely to see
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Wendi.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Thank you. I see a person who is identified as iPad. Gentlemen, could you identify yourself? If you have an email, could you share it with us?
What, you mean me?
Yes, yes.
Put in the reactions or something, yes?
Yes, please. If you could put in the chat line your email, I'll lift it from you and send you the recording of this marvelous lecture. Thank you.
Well, I'm a member of Canterbury District Interfaith Action, CANDIFA.
Okay.
And I think there are probably a number of us tuned in.
I might have your email address. What's your name, please?
Well, I'm just a member of it, but it'll be CANDIFA is the first part of it. I'm trying to remember the second part.
Okay, I'll find CANDIFA address. Don't worry.
You find CANDIFA, it'll be there.
I think I've got some people from CANDIFA. Thank you.
Yep. Good. Thank you. And I hope you get your code.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Bye-bye. Bye, David.